Good morning. My name is Richard Miller, and Never Not Here is our show where we talk, and who knows, every once in a while we might listen. But I mean, the premise is just like, can we learn things from our fellow man? So, of course, there's schools, and there's our upbringing, and there's enculturation, and there's also a resistance to seeing things in a new way or a different way, and maybe that could be something very interesting to look into and say, well, how can I share with my fellow man, and how can he share with me, and how can it really be embodied? And so this morning we're speaking to the Netherlands, and please help me welcome Nishant.
Thank you, Richard. Nice to be with you. Good evening from my side, and good morning to you.
You know, I've been thinking about how we learn, and of course, there's a cerebral component that we read books and we go to school, and many of us think that that's most of learning. And then there's another part of learning, which is our experience. And hopefully the cerebral part can be translated into experience, and then it can be kind of owned or really come home. And then thinking a little bit before our experience, maybe our first way of learning is by imitation. And imitation in one way is like monkey see, monkey do, but in another way, it's like reflection, or it's like resonance. In other words, we're imitating the mood, the anxiety level, and so many factors of our culture and our family that imitation kind of predates all other learning.
You know, I think what you have to look at is a few things. One is which brain is learning. You know, just what we call the conscious mind, or the kind of learning that happens in school, is really just a very, very small fraction of our intelligence potential. There's a huge intelligence potential in the brain and the heart, and there's the brain and the belly. And there's also what I would call the primordial intelligence that you're born with, or as the Buddhists would say, the sanity that you're born with. So the school intelligence is actually just a very small fraction of our intelligence potential, and where that kind of learning is just maybe 1,000th of the kind of learning that's going on, or remembering that's going on, in the heart and in the body and in the belly, and if I can use the word, in our soul.
So that is like a non-embodied learning. Somehow you could just say that is the abstract learning.
Actually, I would say there's an intelligence in us that has occupied different bodies, but probably the most direct access to it is still through the body, through not thinking, but actually through sensing and working with the intelligence that's in the body. One of my meditation teachers said that the art of meditation is synchronizing body and mind. And for me, working as a therapist, as I do, I also would say it's something similar. It's like there's a huge field of intelligence going on through your whole body.
Say a little bit more about synchronizing your body and mind, because I mean, there's mind in every cell, right? There's mind in your body too, but what mind do you mean that needs synchronization? Is that the abstract mind that I was referring to?
Well, most of us have a mind going on up in the brain, more or less the prefrontal cortex, or where there's a lot of abstract thinking, or the limbic brain, which is the emotional brain, where we would call that me. And that me is very busy trying to cope with the world and what it wants and what it can get and what it's afraid of and this and that.
So the me is in both the abstract brain and the emotional brain. Is that
Yeah.
so?
It
That's the me.
depends on, like, the abstract brain is who I think I am, and the emotional brain is like who I might feel I am.
Right. To me, the abstract means to me language. In other words, we take a sound and we say it has a meaning, and then we concentrate on those meanings, which are not necessarily here at this moment, but they're, and that's why I call it abstract, because it can be in some presumed place other than here and now, and it must
Yes.
come out of some memory, But to me, it also seems like emotions are tied in those same memories, because each picture, each image has an emotional content that somehow is part of the memory. In other words, there's a body memory besides a mind memory, if you want to say. The body would be like if I'm upset or feeling anxious or something like that. That anxiety is in the same it's in the same image of that particular memory. And so then the body just goes back to that reflect that memory, just like the mind thinks of that thought.
That's where it starts. As a therapist, my job is to um, allow both of those systems enough respect and freedom to start unwinding. So, for example, if someone meets anger or meets fear or meets sadness or meets the usual stuff, um, that isn't a barrier or a wall, it actually becomes a doorway. And if you can say, um, sense your legs and feel your anger, or sense your belly and feel your anger, or sense your arms and feel your anger, then there's the capacity to move out of the past tense version of anger, or out of the remembered anger, into the present tense experience of um, what seems like anger, and find out that perhaps it isn't anger, or perhaps there's something else going on as well, or there's an intelligent quality in it that's not just memory.
Yeah, I think that's very, very helpful. Just to say the past tense version of anger and contrast that with the present tense version of a feeling which we're thinking is anger and may be more. I mean, that seems to be very, very helpful.
It is. Most of us have what I call a hit and run affair with our emotions. As soon as there's an emotion, we run. And when you do that, you always feel helpless to the emotion and kind of stay in a 3-year-old or 4-year-old or 6-year-old or 10-year-old program with it. But if you can develop the capacity to breathe with it, um, to allow it or even trust it or sit in it or embody it, um, and instead of you going back in time to the emotion, you can bring the emotion to your present tense reality. Um, these same emotions turn into some amazing bridges and insights and creative places. Very, very different and very exciting way of being with yourself.
I mean, that goes way deeper than emotions too, because just the present tense version of yourself is something that not too many of us are really enjoying. Some of us think it's kind of boring right now, but back then it was great, or tomorrow it'll be better. And
Yeah, usually that the boringness of me now is based on a pretty rigid system of what I would call ignorance, or um, um, trying to maintain a certain kind of control or a certain kind of stability, or um, disallowed feeling. Or, if you disallow 10 feelings, all of those build up um, a negative um, charge inside, and then you have to hold on against that negative charge, and then you say, well, I'm bored, because you don't have the ability to explore the liquid freedom of who you are right now, because you're so busy dealing with holding off these negative
so you're
charges.
holding back the dam, and that is a boring feeling, holding, not allowing anything to flow, right?
Exactly. And this one who has held back the dam um, is a boring personality.
I was
It
thinking
seemed to,
also that the boring part is that so much of our past and our future are about hype. We hype it, and say, "Oh, it's really pumped up." But it's kind of hard to pump up this moment because just here I am and I'm sitting in this chair. I mean, what can I pump up about that? But I mean, what you
well,
said is very, very, very illuminating. Also, I mean,
you know, um, I work as a therapist, and 25 times a day, um, I'm so there with myself and with the other person that this moment is all there is. And when this moment is all there is, one of the most exciting things starts to happen is you don't have a clue who you are.
so the
And
continuity is gone, right? The continuity of yesterday or tomorrow is based on some kind of like
the
projection.
continuity slides back into the background. It's kind of like music in the background. But there's a present tense foreground that is so much more palpable and real and absolutely unknown. And to say it's unknown doesn't mean it's chaotic, and it doesn't mean there's a huge intelligence that is in all of us that is very at home in the unknown when we allow ourselves to be comfortable there.
We call that trust or something like that, and we think that we have to somehow work ourselves up to that and have at least enough spiritual experiences that we can trust them. Or, I mean, but you're saying that just some natural intelligence is already at home there.
Already, um, you know, um, you don't have to tell a bird how to fly, and you don't have to tell your heart how to be here. You just have to stop the art of not being here, or the art of ignoring or avoiding what's here. If you can have the space to be with what's here, um, there is an exquisite intelligence for handling it. So, you know, there's, the way I see it, as compassionately as possible, is that we have what I would call a social self and a natural self. And the social self is, people call it ego, or people call it character, or people call it personality. It's a self that we have very determinedly tried to build to deal with all of the stress and pressure of a family, a society, going to school, having friends, all that kind of stuff. The social self we consider ignorant until educated, or um, uncivilized until it's civilized. It's a created thing. And we get so identified with this social self because it's our mask, it's our protection, that we completely lose contact with the natural self and forget that this natural self has as much intelligence in it as any animal on earth, any tree on earth, any mountain. There's a huge field of natural intelligence in all of us.
I'm just totally loving what you're saying, and it's kind of like a breakthrough because mostly we'd say our conditioned self or something like that, and it has such a negative connotation like, oh, you got to get out of that and you just have to live in your natural self, forget your conditioned self. But you're just saying your social self is like a tool for getting along, a tool for playing the game of society. And then when you somehow feel that that's all there is, it's kind of like nerve wracking. But if you have one foot in the natural self, you can play in the social self with really, I don't know if I should say impunity, but I mean, just say with a lot of fun and a lot of even expertise, I would say.
Yeah, I think if we just see the social self for what it is, then there's no need to make a big fuss or a big fight about it. You know, it's not evil ego, and it's not dark, and it's just a very programmed thing that was more or less created by a kid. The problem with it really is that um, we get so attached to it that we don't know how to slide out of it into the natural self when it's time to slide out into the natural self.
Yeah. What I was saying in the beginning is, with the reflection or resonance, I was saying it was created by a kid, but it was also created by a mom and a grandma, and all kinds of familiar pressures and so on. So that it's just, not even ours. You say it's created by a kid, you can personalize it and say, well, some kids did it better, but really, it's not you. It's not. It's just like.
No, you're right, Richard. When I work as a therapist, I would say 80% of the feelings that people are struggling with um, aren't even theirs. They're inherited or part of the family line or part of the family tree. If you look, unworthiness. Where did this feeling of unworthiness start? You know, it
Well,
was in the
definitely for me, it started with my dad was unworthy of himself, and so then somehow I just picked it up really big time.
exactly. That's how it works. Or the grandfather, or the great grandfather. These things get passed along, and I think it's a mistake in modern therapy to say if you separate from your family neurosis, you can be happy. I work more from the principle of the family tree. It's like this is what I've been given to work with, and if I can see that the family has struggled with this issue, and now it's my turn to see what I can do with it, uh, then there's a whole different field of support that comes to me, or I feel like I'm part of a team in working on this.
In other words, I can solve it for not only my brothers and sisters, but maybe I can solve it for my departed ancestors. Who knows where they're at or if they're in
They are
existence.
cheering for you. I can promise you, they are cheering for you. And if you were to untangle it, um, they will be dancing in the streets, so to speak. Um, yes, there's a continuity of consciousness going on where if you untangle where they got stuck, they are thrilled.
I've heard of something like that called constellation work, meaning family constellation, I think.
Constellation as a therapy concept, I'm not that well trained in and don't know so well, uh, but it's something that I use all the time in my workshops. Um, I think part of the suffering we're in is that we feel like we're doing it all alone. And for me, it's if you can make peace with being part of your family line and an extension of your family line, then you also start to see, wait a minute, there's more to it than that. Um, I'm part of a line of consciousness. Um,
So then
there's a
you go
bigger.
outside your family. You can just go right outside your family into something way, way
You're,
larger. Just
yeah,
one comment. Just one comment. You're saying that constellation is something that seems to be obvious, and so that it must be a lot of truth to it because without formal training, you recognize it.
yeah. For me, it's been if you just have the courage to stay there, it becomes totally obvious to me and to everyone there. We're not alone. And this whole notion of aloneness is really based on kind of the contractions of the social self, but it has it's not really the real thing. And it's a lot of suffering that goes on because we try and do it alone, or we think we're alone, or you know, we keep ourselves in little alone kind of boxes.
How can that really manifest? Because okay, I can say I'm not alone, but here I am. I'm the only guy in this room, and so somehow I have a dream that my family or parents are cheering for me, or I just go out and open up to groups and go to meetings and actually manifest a togetherness, or what exactly are we saying?
Um, Try something for just a minute if you don't mind. Just
I'd love
sit
to.
good in your chair and eyes closed or eyes open, up to you. But just sense or imagine somewhere behind you there's a light. Could be far away, could be close, but somewhere back there there's a light. And when you've got it, tell me what color it is.
White with a yellow tinge.
Right. Now, just sense what happens when that white with yellow light touches your body or your field. What happens to you when that light with the yellow touches you?
First, it feels warm like the sun.
Uh-huh.
And I like it, because somehow my body likes that. Those solar rays.
Now imagine that you can just open your hands just a little bit. And that light quality not only touches your body, but comes into your body and through your body in a way that it can come out your hands.
Now it feels like my arms are just kind of, the muscles in my arms are kind of just like letting go.
Uh-huh.
And somehow the light's behind me and I'm in a chair, so I'm letting it come in my neck where my head sticks up above the chair.
Yeah. And feel what happens to your heart as this light is just allowed to come in and touch your body and transmit through your arms and hands.
What happened was that my presence seemed to stay in my head, but it went to a deep kind of indigo blue, and there was really no thought. I went to a spacious opening. It didn't necessarily fall to the sun was gone. The arm muscles were still relaxed and flowing out of my hand. And then I was in a more of a dark, deep blue space, and I didn't really descend to my heart, but it was a very peaceful lake-like, submerging, and no need to think.
Beautiful. So your question to me was, how does this sense of being part of something bigger help me live my daily life, or what does that mean in daily living? And here we are 5 minutes later, realizing that you have a capacity of deep peacefulness, indigo, relaxation, openness of mind, stillness. When you feel this support around you, suddenly your essence qualities start to offer what they've got to offer and reveal themselves to you and to other people.
That answers very well my question, because I was thinking that togetherness had to do with groups of individuals, and somehow I'm always looking at my own individuality and wondering about it. And so then when somebody and not you didn't say this, but some people talk about angels or guides or more individuals or family tree constellation. these things run in my mind like, isn't that more complications? And but what happened just now is definitely a simplification and a clarification.
And a real act of beauty to see the just for the little support, your social self gladly cleared out, and your essential self um, um, just unfolded.
Somehow that, it struck me as the real skill of the therapist, or the, somehow, what do I want to call it, group leader or something like that, or somebody that's really offering themselves. And the real skill is just somehow talk so directly to that essential self that the essential self just says, oh yeah, right, he's talking to me, I better come up and listen.
Yes, and it's something that, not to be embarrassing here, but it's something that I first saw in the presence of Osho. That he could see the nature of somebody. Somebody has a active kind of love. Some people have a quiet kind of love. Some people are warriors. Some people are priests. Some people are, to see the individual nature of someone at that level and recognize it is such a gift, and if you talk to it and invite it, it comes.
Right, we've listened to that from so many angles and from so many people, but not everyone has the skill, and I don't know what it is. Somehow, I mean, maybe it's just talking on the social level, or the social me, what should I say, using the concepts that I've constructed my social self with, and speaking too much in those concepts somehow keeps the social self in the to be the main listener, and the essential self is not really constructed of any concepts. And so somehow less and less, well, concepts are like verbal models, right? Something, I'm not saying you can even speak a word without a concept, but something about the old ones can keep you stuck.
For me, the art here starts with, the art of the school kind of mind is the analytic mind, which is to divide, focus, and conquer. And the mind of the heart is to unify. So if you use the normal mind, there's a lot of aggression between the social self and the natural self. And there's a lot of internal conflict within the social self. Usually people say, can you help me fix one part of me who's at war with another part of me? And that kind of intelligence doesn't really open the door that you just discovered right now. It's like when the heart intelligence starts to come in, then there's a genuine interest in unification. And there isn't a choosing of sides of saying one is good and one is bad and one is right and one is wrong. There's a genuine ability to embrace the whole thing. And in that, a natural kind of cooperation starts to happen, where the social self and the natural self both get to play their part. But it's through the heart that starts to happen. That kind of coordination starts to happen through the heart. Through the analytic mind, you don't get coordination. like I say, you get divide and conquer.
Both play their part. I mean, that's really interesting. What we need to hear more about. I wanted to make one comment that maybe unifying is not really something that you said the heart is unifying, but in a way, it's just accepting what is, and what is doesn't really have boundaries and isn't chopped up. Only the social self has the capacity to do that. So I'm wondering if it's not. Otherwise, we might be trying to unify, and probably you can't unify what's already one, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then the social self takes it on and says, yes, I can unify now. I heard him say that. In fact, I am almost I mean, I know sometimes, lots of times when I have a pretty quiet mind, but still it runs, and what it says is, I got a pretty quiet mind. It's still going, saying, hey, I'm identified with this quietness. Hey, it's going along pretty good.
For me, there's a just through my own exploration, just like a quality, you have to be very kind of compassionate with yourself because while it's true, it's all one. That's such a big field for us to drop into, and at first it feels so impersonal. We don't really know what to do there. And I kind of take people out into that oneness, more like a swimming instructor. Let's put your foot in the water, wade in, or come in, come out, come in, come out. And slowly, slowly, slowly get it home in that field of oneness.
Don't some people kind of put it that in that field of oneness? I mean, you were just saying, well, it's really hard to know what to do in there or what to make of it, And aren't people saying like, well, that field of oneness actually is where you aren't there, you didn't show up, the idea of you somehow isn't there. So then, of course, the idea of you that isn't there isn't going to know what to do or won't be able to make much of it.
There's about 50 different levels you can get into.
Is that just too trite, what I said?
Well, for the people I work with, I wouldn't call it trite, but for the people I work with, most of the people I work with and most of my experience um, has a very strong quality of me in it, a sense of me here, along with somewhere around the edges or around the background, a sense of um, undisturbed space. Um, and yes, someday there will be only undisturbed space, and that undisturbed space is even here right now. Uh, but uh, this experience of meanness still needs to be compassionately embraced or unwound or discovered or explored in a way that it opens up um, to that undisturbed space.
In some way, it seems like it has to become less important. In other words, less important for what? Less important for survival, or less important because it needs something. And then when that happens, then it can just take a snooze or go fast a little bit,
Well, yeah, um, I kind of see a little different picture in that. Um, that um, let's just say the insecurity that's part of my life, and I can trace back to my mother and father and grandfather and grandmother. Um, Part of my being in the family tree is to unwind that insecurity. Now, I could just pop out and say, well, it's all undivided space and there isn't any such thing as insecurity. But as it is that insecurity is a part of my experience and a part of is a compassion field here where okay, as long as I'm in this body and as long as I've got these interactions going on with people, let me play the game here for a little bit. Let me do my part here. I suspect that if we don't fight the ego self or social self, you don't have to get rid of it. You actually need to express through it. How you doing?
Hey, very well put. Very well put. I mean, I can realize that my family is full of insecurities, and me too. But somehow I never want to define them as real, in a sense, or define them that I need to work with them. And somehow I suppose I have a tendency to, in a way, dismiss them. And I don't know if I'm experiencing my fears or running from them, but somehow I'm not too afraid of them. I don't know where I'm at with that. But something about making it seems too easy to define them as entities that need to be considered. And yet I can read you that it's kind of fake just to define that they don't exist and live as usual, business as usual.
Yeah, I'm a kind of a compassion-oriented person where um, whatever suffering is in me or in my clients, I try to say yes to it. And in that saying yes to it, experience it in a way that it becomes less of a burden for myself or for the other people, and less of a burden for all the people all over who are caught in the same stuff. And the big impersonal field is kind of where I go and have a bath and renew and discover the non-seriousness and da-da-da-da-da. But I also don't mind materializing as a wave in the ocean and dealing with things like anger and fear and ambition and fight and flight and all this kind of stuff. I find a great joy in helping people learn to just simply love themselves. And how can you love yourself when you divide yourself and say this part's good and that part doesn't exist, or this part's real and that part isn't? I think you have to open your arms to the whole thing. And I have found that if I can be present to any of it, in the body, breathing, nothing is what I thought it was. And as you are an artist of the present moment, anything that you can bring to the present moment turns into gold. And for me, the where does all this go to is that ability to live in the present moment, not knowing who you are. Not saying I am space, I am good, I am just, you just don't need all that. You're just 100% happy to be here and let it happen.
It's just perfect. I mean, like what you just said before, if you're not willing, if some part of you is good and some part of you is judged as needy, how can you possibly have compassion for that? Somehow you have to be pushing from one place to another. And so if you're thinking that I'm space, in those moments when I'm not pure space. Something's deficient. There's the compassion can't really be there, and just the open fun of it, the fun of just loving yourself,
Yeah.
and it just can't be there. It has to be always on an
Well,
improvement.
you can tie yourself up in a knot and beat yourself to death, and the space is still the space. The space is always there. Always. You know that. So you can't make it go away. You can't get rid of it. You can ignore it. Yeah. You can get so preoccupied in your emotional TV station that you lose it. But the space is always there, and it's always around. But if you're going to be exploring um, um, the qualities of me, or the qualities of the family tree, or the qualities of being with people, why not be compassionate with it? Why not let the space give you enough support that you can really open your heart to being here, and using that heart's intelligence to create a new relating, a new self, a new humanity. Um, yeah, like that.
It's so different that the way the world runs, or the way it appears to run, and this is that kind of an idea is so rare that, okay, the social self is built in a separation, built in with separation, or built on separation, or the idea that if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it for me. I got to do it. And so then there's a huge need of me manufacturing my experience and manufacturing my improvement and betterment. And
Yeah.
and
All of
so
that's true.
so then that is,
And
yeah.
go ahead. All of that's true, but as you noticed, if someone has the ability to um, not fight the social self and ring the bell of the natural self, it gets heard. And I suspect at this time there is so much stress on the social self. I mean, so much stress that its ability to manage and cope um, is right at the edge. And either that turns into a let go, and the overflow of the natural self starts to happen, or the social self goes into huge contraction and collapse and fighting and the usual mess. And I feel like we're in a wonderful window of opportunity right now for the uh, stress on the social self to turn into opportunity for the natural self.
Sometimes it's put that this is like a cusp, and it's either or, we're gonna go to complete destruction, or we're gonna go to complete liberation. But of course, everything appears on the earth and in on this planet in all its possible gradations, from the most tight and tense to the most open and relaxed, and so that's all going to happen at once. And the opportunity is for those that are on the relaxed side is to have a huge compassion for those that are completely tight. And I guess that's probably a better prediction than saying where it's an either or thing.
Yeah, I don't really carry the quality of prediction so much. What I do know is that in the moments where there is alignment, like you felt with this light behind you, or with the spaciousness of being here, in those moments time stops. There is no time. There's no past. There's no future. There's no history. There's no right. There's no wrong. Um, the very fundamental basics of consciousness are just now. And in that just nowness, there is intense communication with all of the just nowness that exists in everybody, whether we know it or not. whether we're aware of it or not. Whether it's in the mountains, it's in the fish, it's in the dolphins, it's in the trees.
So it's in the
This,
ancestors too, because just now is also, what we perceived to be the past is just now.
yeah. But in the just now, if you sit in the just now, and your consciousness refreshes itself and merges with just now, that is a huge act of creation that kind of rings or sends out uh, uh, energy or vibrations all over. When time stops, which it does all the time, so does the social self. And in that, the natural self has the eyes of its heart and the eyes to see. And when you look at someone with the eyes and love of your heart, you see the love in that person. And that love in the person starts to ruffle its feathers. Something starts to happen.
I almost prefer to say when the time doesn't start instead of time stops, because time stop sounds like time is a thing that's going and it'll actually stop. But time doesn't start means that it isn't a real thing, and so that fake time thing doesn't kick off.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's too detailed, but somehow I think that words lead us astray so easily. And objectifying everything seems to be a Western habit. European languages and English seem to have a noun for everything. And so time is another one of those things that really isn't a thing, maybe.
For me, it's like I I have the curse of the alarm at 6:30, office at 9, first client 9:30, second client 10:45, third client 1 o'clock. Um, First client is in tears, second client is in ecstasy, third client's daughter got raped. It's a day, and it's all, within an hour and a quarter. It goes on all day, 5 days a week, and on the weekend I get one day off, and then sometimes there's a group. So I'm very much in the illusion of time, and very much in the, uh, my watch stays pretty close to me. And even in knowing that I'm only going to be with this person for an hour and a quarter, there's maybe 4 or 5 moments where time stops, and it's just exquisite.
Right. I mean, you started when we started the conversation, you shared that many, many times during the day, there's just a very clear space with clients and with yourself. And so maybe that's the only reason that you can really play this watch so intensely, because somehow it's just a game, or it's just it's just your choice to play it.
Yeah.
And
you got
I couldn't do that unless I started to learn a little bit more of the light behind me, or be willing to just step in there.
Well, you just notice that it didn't take much for you to discover this light behind you, and frequently I work with people where there's a light in front of them as well, and once you open to the feeling of a light behind you and a light in front of you, you also can open to the feeling that there's a light inside you already right now. And you just relax into those things, and suddenly your whole um, essence system, natural system, just turns on.
So would you just say these are little techniques, or I mean, that help you discover something that's it's always here?
Yeah, yeah. I think the the problem in modern society, as I've seen it, isn't that we um, don't get tastes of the goodies of consciousness. It's just we don't have much support to live it. We feel like um, everybody else is so in their contraction and ambition and in speed and in time and in fear and in pain and da 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 da. Where do I get to live my openness, or how do I live my openness? You know, and if I have many clients, they open up beautifully, and then they look at me and say, "Now, what am I supposed to do when I go home?" You know?
Right on. I mean, that's a really good question. Like, what do we do with those tastes?
Yeah,
What's that? What's the use of that taste to me? I mean, at least I know that I'm not totally insane, but I mean, I never can really put it into practice, or
yeah.
rarely, let's say, or somehow it seems like I can't relate to other people unless I kind of somehow bring myself to a little bit, at least, their level. I don't know. Is that true,
Yeah.
or is that just my imagination?
Um, I think that's the experience of most of us.
Or maybe it's just an excuse that we just try to excuse ourselves for taking the easy way out of just riding somebody else's reflection. So easy to ride a reflection.
Well, for me, the art is to uh, learn how to ground in myself enough and to feel this big support. I get up early in the morning, so I have some time to talk to my big them around me and ask and to ground in myself in enough that I feel opportunity to release the social self is there. I'll take it. Because the quality of love that starts to happen from the natural is miles ahead of what the social self can do. And so for me, it's like you put on your social self and go to work, and then you just wait for your moments to, okay, now it can slip, the mask comes off, and here's the heart, and from the heart, here's what I see in them, and here's who I talk to, and we establish their heart as the base, and from their heart, then we look at their suffering or their confusion or whatever, and it happens in a totally different context than if you're just trying to work it all out from within the social self.
So that
Like I say,
that mechanicalness of the social self is not necessary, or somehow can be totally absent and only to the benefit of rapport.
yeah, and it's helping people understand that. They think that the social self is what makes rapport, and it takes a little practice and learning to see that actually it's what interferes with the rapport, and that there's another kind of rapport possible when you release out of the social self, like right now.
Sometimes I think of, I hear what you're saying about just staying with your experience, and how you realize it's many times manufactured from an old experience, and it's not really what you think it is. And then you realize, oh, I'm really not angry at all. In fact, maybe I'm sad about something, and maybe even under that, you're not even sad anymore. And and then I think you had said something like, that's not only a benefit for you, but it's a benefit for those around you, or somehow that it's kind of like a neutralization that's happening, that of a past tense recognition that is assuming something is here that isn't. And if that could actually neutralize for somebody that you know, or for somebody that's there in the room, or even for somebody that's not even in the room, and we're even talking about our own family tree that's departed, I mean, wouldn't that also be able to neutralize the world situation? In other words, if we can experience the fears of energy crisis and terrorism and political unrest, maybe that is a solace also for the world.
Yes, that's my piece where I'm playing. This happened a few years ago. I was very in love with a very wonderful woman who was very intelligent and also a pretty solidly formed ego. And as would happen between two therapists who are pretty solidly formed ego, we were in quite a fight. And in the middle of fighting with her, I had this awareness going, I hate her. I just hate her. And then in that awareness, I just kept saying, is that true, or is there something more true? And underneath the hate was, I feel afraid. And I just stayed with that and kept the appearance of the fight going, but I realized actually the reason I'm fighting is because I'm afraid.
Is that all it takes? You don't really have to identify what that fear is, or see that it's groundless or anything like that, or you just say, just stay with it, that's it.
Stay. Just stay. And then after another couple of minutes, this voice came inside and said, why am I afraid and hating this woman? And the answer came from deep inside, because I really love her. If I didn't really love her, why bother to be afraid, or why bother to hate her? Why get so involved? And then suddenly I'm in the middle of this fight, and I realize the reason I'm fighting is because I really love this person. And suddenly, just stop right in the middle of the fight. Just stop and look her in the eye and say, I know I've been really silly and nasty and abusive here with you, but the fact is, all of this has just woken me up to how much I love you. For me, that's how it works in the emotional world. If you can really just track it. Here I am, honestly, truthfully. Here I am, honestly, truthfully. Drop, honestly, drop, honestly, drop, honestly, drop. You always come to your love. And that love wants to be creative. It's not like if you get rid of your anger, you're going to be creative. If you can own your anger and drop through it, there's creativity there. If you can own your fear and drop through it, there's a very specific message or very specific impulse that's trying to come through. It can be a very creative place. You can communicate something that you'd never dared to communicate before. You can rearrange the furniture. You can, something important can happen. Is trying to happen. So I don't try and disown some of these grutty kind of feelings. It's more like hold them, embrace them, and drop through them. And there's an intelligence there that's very much trying to communicate something. And when you can see that, and you see the beauty of that intelligence, then the whole other level of healing with yourself starts to happen.
So as a creative space, well, I mean, to me it sounds like you're creating an openness. is what you're creating. In other words, the anxiety leaves because you've dropped through the anxiety producing beliefs or contractions. And then somehow then from there on you move in an openness, and from there all creativity can happen.
But that openness is not separate from the fear or separate from the anger. It's an extension of the fear and an extension of the anger, and honors that in that anger there was something trying to bridge, something trying to communicate. Something that was blocked is trying to communicate.
Doesn't the anger just leave? Because when you see that, okay, I'm afraid, then the anger really doesn't have a lot of hold anymore, does it? It just means, oh God, I was being mad because I really feel this shaken part of me, And then,
there's the heat of the anger leaves. But in my opinion, there's a lot of intelligence in the anger. There's something important trying to communicate. Part of the anger is the frustration of not being able to communicate something that's important for you.
Well, you can't, doesn't necessarily mean you can communicate it even when you realize what you want to communicate. I can remember times with women that where I dropped through and said and communicated something, and they said, aha, another one of your strategies, back off. They didn't accept it, and they thought, but even then I still knew I was in love, but I couldn't get it through, can't jump over that fence.
Hang in with yourself. You'll know. I haven't found many people really resist the sincerity of your heart. They question it, they'll challenge it, they'll play with you a little while, but if it's there, it's there. If it's a strategy, of course, you have to find the place.
No, I like that. They'll play with you for a while.
Yeah. The heart's a scary place for people. And if you drop into your heart, you have to give a little space for the other person to be scared a little bit, or to
sure
release their defenses before they meet you there. It's a little bit too much for most people just to drop as fast as you drop into your heart.
Something I've been noticing, and maybe, I don't know, I'll ask you if you think it's pretty, maybe it's too superficial, but I've noticed that the way, the story you tell about, or it's a belief, but in a way it's just a story you tell about what's happening, really is what I react to. And where my emotions seem to come from. At least those might be what we call the past tense emotions, and maybe that's where I'm at often anyhow, in the past tense emotions. So the past tense emotions are almost totally controlled by the story I tell about a past tense event. And so then I can experiment by restoring some of those past tense events, at least the ones that I'm able to be loose enough on to just say, okay, let me take a couple of different points of view here. And then I can notice that really the whole emotional charge is totally different. So then I can take less, what should I say? I don't take it so seriously, any emotional charge, because I know that part of it is in the past tense stories that I'm holding. And I'm saying past tense now just because in the beginning of our conversation we mentioned something about how much of our emotional load is preconceived, or like a program. And so what I'm saying is that maybe somehow I've just taken it that all emotional loads are really story-based, or belief based. I believe in a certain system of justice and injustice and right. This would be right and this would be wrong, and I shouldn't be treated that way, and or whatever makes me feel contracted. And so then, in a way, I guess I have a tendency to dismiss a lot of emotions, or really not take them too seriously, or even think that it could be possible that I could just almost choose that anxiety wouldn't have to be my prime mover, And if it really came up heavy duty, okay, I would have to do something like we were speaking of just sit with it and go deep into it, but not move from it, not necessarily make it my call to action. And then just have a belief that instead of a belief that anxiety is effective, I could have a belief, just as an experiment, a belief that contentment is effective. And curiosity is a good way to attack my life. Like I'm really curious, like what I do with Never Not Here. I'm totally curious. I mean, I work a lot, but I mean, I don't really. There's nothing about it that's anxiety based.
Yeah. Now, it sounds beautiful. It sounds fun. For me, it's like this. It works. Let's say this, an old familiar feeling, anxiety. Yeah.
Right.
And you learn in time that I've done A, B, and C, and anxiety still keeps coming here. But then you say, where do I sense this anxiety? Well, some of it's in my solar plexus, some of it's in my chest. Which is the stronger one right now? Well, let's say the chest feels more empty somehow. So if I feel that, and really just softly breathe with it, there's this huge feeling of deficiency will start to show up.
Deficiency, you said.
Deficiency, emptiness. Like not a good kind of emptiness. It's like a real, something's missing.
Hollowness.
Hollow. Yeah. And this is a very scary place because the social self cannot handle this. If you can kind of learn to kind of sink into and not be afraid of the deficiency, you'll start to see that inside the deficiency, it's like a dark room where if you stay in the dark room long enough, you start to see little objects in that dark room. Inside there's probably somebody who really wanted affection. Really, 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 really wanted affection and didn't get it. And so his coping system turns into, when wanting affection shows up, turns into a suppression. Don't feel this. Danger. You're going to get hurt. Not good. Not allowed. Not okay. So then in that suppression, the natural instinct in you to say, I want affection, or please hold me, or please love me, or am I okay, turns into a very, very bad character that has to get suppressed and denied and pushed away and called bad and wrong.
And so this pushing away is what the emptiness is, kind of like when in the beginning of our conversation we said if we have to hold back 7 or 8 emotions, it's very, very stressful.
That's right.
This present moment is very stressful.
So then in that repression of the natural instinct comes this awful feeling of emptiness. Yeah. Now, say, I believe this or I believe that, and that can reframe your experience. You can also go through the awful emptiness and see, what I really want here is some affection or some, am I okay? Am I loved? And if you can sit with that and hold it for just a little bit, that can give some very warm feeling. Um, it goes from a negative feeling into a positive feeling and can actually put a nice kind of smile on your face or a nice warm heart for your day. You realize I'm looking for love, I'm looking for affection, I'm looking for something that's warm and lets me know I'm okay. Well, if I know what I'm looking for, chances are I have a much better chance of finding that. Even if it's eating a tuna fish sandwich at home by myself, I can have affection in eating that tuna fish sandwich by myself. Or if it's looking in the eye of someone and just smiling and saying, oh, here's some affection now. And here's the feeling of being okay. It gives you marvelous guidance for your day.
Is it possible that somehow that can be internalized or like somehow be more of a permanent part of you? Do those revelations actually hook into the meanness and become a long-term?
It does. It does. Sooner or later, you realize that if you can unwind the distortions of the social self, there's always the natural self there. And if you can go through, I want affection, the feeling of I didn't get affection as a little kid and I still want affection. If you can unwind that a little bit, you'll actually realize I'm full of affection. I love to give affection.
See, the way you frame that is so helpful because if you're framing it just as, okay, we're all social selves and we all have to unwind a few old things, I mean, that could be really endless. But if you frame it as a social self and a natural self, and then at any time the natural self is available, then somehow that seems to be way more relieving.
Yeah, it is. So sooner or later you realize I'm full of affection or full of love. And when I realize that, who can stop me? I can share affection, I can share love, I can smile, I can... it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, the guidance that comes that way.
I guess we've all kind of looked into many kinds of spiritual practices. And I'm not referring to what we've just said now, but I mean just to put something else in perspective with this and kind of take a look at it. And okay, there's all kinds of breathings and dancings and meditations and throwing off tensions and so on. And somehow after these deep and these week-long meditation courses or these periods of maybe years of silence, somehow when we come out of that silence, seems like that our main stories, our main structures of me are still intact. And then people start to say, okay, well, there's the spiritual world and there's a real world. And that's when I started to notice that if you start to play with those stories a little bit and jigger them around a little, let's say, and then notice that they're just, everything changes. Everything totally changes when you're on those things that are light enough that you can actually fool around with this story, And then later you realize that, maybe that's all my stories are probably just totally arbitrary and come out of my social conditioning or my parental predispositions or whatever somehow. And for me, a lot of my stories have rekindled themselves in a way, in a broader way, where I would say that many of those angers are things that don't come up anymore. They really don't come up at all. I mean, even if the shadow of them comes up, it just seems like a joke. And it certainly changed my behavior in simpler things like driving, like work, and like, relating to people or feeling like I'm not being related to. And maybe I'm not, it's the same story there, but it's kind of like it doesn't really bring an anxious pressure. And so then that pressure's really not there to kind of find in my chest and to let it dissolve, And whether that's just a total denial or whether in a way that looking at that new story, which is not even a right story or a wrong story. It's just realizing there's so many stories, and they're all like, they're really, it's not what's real, In other words, we think our story's real. We think it's I'm reacting to reality. I can recognize a jerk when I see one. This guy's a real dodo, but really, all those stories are just, is what we react to, is how we hold it, not what's there. And so then somehow that's been a huge liberation for me.
It's, as you get a taste of true nature, as you get a taste of reality, your system naturally starts orienting towards true nature and towards reality. Just like, when you've had a good taste of reality or a good taste of quietness or something, you just naturally start orienting towards it. And that's what I hear, is that as you more naturally orient towards inner reality, or the oneness of reality, a lot of your system just naturally reorganizes itself that way.
Right. It's just it's all about presence, right? Just being, show up every once in a while,
Yeah, that's a good.
And when you're here, you see things, and when you're not, you're all concerned on the why of it. You're only trying to confirm your whys,
I think we can just leave it just with just show up once in a while, and
a miracle happens.
That's the way to go.
Nishant, I've really, really, really opened my heart with you, and not only just because of a small meditation or something like that, because so much to me, words mean really control us in ways we don't know, and to soften on words and to say things in a more compassionate way, I think is so powerful and so needed. And that's kind of what I'm about, is just taking a fine look at how we language things and what happens to us because of that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I really thank you, Nishant.
I also have felt we've had a very nice heart dance in this time, and back and forth, and I'm appreciating the work and compassion that you're following also there. I also would like to remind you I have a book called The Friend. You can get it through Amazon or bookstores, and if you make a note of it as part of this little presentation, and you also might enjoy to read it yourself sometime.
Definitely. I would love to see it. The Friend by Nishant. Yeah. Do you just say Nishant Matthews as an author?
Nishant Matthews, author. The Friend, Amazon has it. O-Books from UK and America printed it.
Thank you very much. Been a lovely, lovely, lovely meeting.
Thank you. Until the next time.
Yes.